Bayang solid nung Gina.
Ininom mo na?
Ito.
Yun na yun.
Sarap.
You could probably buy from Amazon.
I would totally buy from Amazon.
Or you could bring some back.
Okay, sige. Sorry guys, well, 5 more minutes. If nobody shows up, I think we can just call it quits and say na nobody, Thanks so much. Thanks so much for doing this. I know it's medyo haphazard, and I wish I could say more, but ako din, I just got thrown into this the last minute. So sorry again.
No, no worries, no worries.
Yeah, that's
My
fine.
pleasure.
Okay. Sige. So
It happens.
yeah. So pag mga 10, what time you guys want to call on? Mga 10, 18, 10, 20, ganun.
Sure, sure.
You can call it You can call it a day because I'm pretty sure you guys have work to do, and I know I have a lot of work to do then today. So.
Okay, no problem.
Hey, one viewer. And wala naman.
Is Trixie there?
So she's supposed to be, but I can't. Trixie, can you talk? Oh, I don't know. Wait, let me message her.
Okay, so 2 viewers. So yeah, I think we can start then. So, unfortunately, hi. So hi everybody, thanks for joining us for this camp talk session about transfers. So if the panel would like to just introduce themselves one by one, that we can start off. That'd be great. The panel will go for about 45 minutes. So this talk will end at 11 o'clock. Just because I know it's late in the Philippines, and I know that the panel also has a lot of work they can do as well. So yeah, so the panel can just introduce themselves. That'd be great.
Okay. Bea, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, I'm Beatrice Ong. I am a second-year MBA at Wharton. I did not do my undergrad here in the US. I studied at LaSalle, and I only moved over last fall for the MBA program.
Okay, I can go ahead. So my name is Paul. I'm also a second-year MBA at Wharton. I went to Ateneo for college and then worked for 4 years in the Philippines in banking prior to coming to the US for my MBA.
Yeah, I'll go next. Hi guys, my name is Lance. I'm currently a senior at Harvard College. I studied in UP for 2 years before deciding to transfer to the US in 2013.
Okay, so the way this works is if you guys have more questions, feel free to. Oh wait, sorry, one more. Hi Patricia, can you just introduce yourself?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Trixie. So I'm an MA student as well, similar to Paul and Bea. Did my undergrad in the Philippines. I went to UP, and then after that, I worked for HSBC. So, yeah.
Okay, guys. So the way this works is, if you have any questions, feel free to send it to the camp email. I have it open, and then I'll refer those questions to the panel. So, but I think just to start, so can you guys sort of briefly explain like what your motivation for coming to the States was? Like, what sort of attracted you to the States? And you guys can do it in any order. This is really informal. Feel free to like cut in on others or sort of voice out if you feel necessary.
Okay, so I guess for me, like I did my undergrad back in Manila, and I also worked in Manila, so I felt that there was always a want or a desire to kind of broaden my horizons and kind of see just what's out there and just like have greater exposure to like global markets and business and all of that. So I decided to come for my MBA just because I felt it would be a very good like experience both personally and professionally.
Yeah, I guess for me, there were like I went to UP and I had a great time at UP, but there were a lot of things that I wanted to do that UP could not necessarily offer, and one of them was really to get a what I thought was a broader liberal arts-based education as opposed to something that was more technical. So when I was in UP, I was studying broadcast communication, which was radio and TV production, and the focus there was really on becoming a media practitioner someday. There were opportunities for me, for example, to be involved and to try to learn theory and all those things, but there were a lot of things I could not do. I couldn't take, or I didn't have as much flexibility, for example, to take classes in psychology or even math classes or things in like other disciplines. It was very hard and not as not as integral a part of the education as it was in the U.S. So that was for me one of the big things that really pushed me to come here for my undergrad.
For me, I guess primarily it was the experience. Like the international experience is something I've always wanted to try out. So that was my primary driver. Next to that, it's also the opportunities that you get coming to study here in the States as opposed to staying in the Philippines. That the amount of opportunities you get in terms of like working in a variety of industries or companies is so much greater. So those were the two things that I was thinking about when I moved here.
Mm. For me, very similar to the others, I wanted to be able to live and study abroad, and I felt like coming to the US would give you a great, just platform from which to, of course, experience living in the US, but also after graduation to recruit into different industries in the US and Asia. It gives you great flexibility, and I felt like that was something that's important for me for my career, and having studied and worked in the Philippines, basically, I mean, my whole life, felt like it was something I really wanted to do. So that's why I decided to come for my MBA.
Okay, thanks for sharing, guys. I think so. The next question is, can you recall your sort of admissions process, and was there anything in particular that like was a challenge, or did you wish na, or is there anything basically that you wish you knew before you applied, so that you would have known, or you could have done better in your application?
So for B school application, we had to like submit a resume or essays, and it's certainly very different from how applications were done in Manila. Like when I was applying for college, the forms were pretty straightforward. You sort of knew like you didn't necessarily need to put as much effort into the essays or whatever, and then you just had to take the exam, and that was pretty much it. For applying to school here, like I didn't realize how big of an importance they put on the essays and how they would have a question, but there's an underlying question to the question that you sort of need to answer. Your resume also is also very different from what it has to be from like the Philippines. So little things like that I only found out through talking to people who had made the move already and who could like guide me through that process.
Mm,
I think to add to that, I had very similar experience Trixie's around essays and um, general application process, where it's very different from what you're used to in the Philippines. I also think that one thing that I hope I had done a little bit more research on was to really understand the different program offerings of the like different business schools that I was looking into, and you get the sense of that through the process through talking to alumni. Um, there's very big differences between, for example, the MBA program at Wharton versus at Harvard versus at University of Chicago, for instance. And I mean, ideally, you should be able to like snuff out these differences very early on, so that you can prioritize which universities you like, which programs are better fit for you.
Oh, sorry, Paul, were you still going to add something?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, so I think one thing that was different in terms of the application was how you are targeting a holistic approach, in that your essays and your recommendations and your resume should all sort of complement each other to give the admissions committee like a good overall view of yourself, and like how you are in work, how you were in undergrad, what your extracurricular activities were. So in a sense, you had to be a little more strategic in terms of choosing what angles of yourself you had to reveal through your essays and like through your recommenders and all of that.
Yeah, I think from the transfer side, I wish um, somebody told me it's better to apply as a freshman and not as a transfer. Um, it like one of the other main reasons why I decided to transfer was because of the financial aid opportunities that Harvard and a couple of other schools offer that are virtually unparalleled when it comes to aid for undergraduates. This is something I didn't know in high school. I thought that you can go to a school and get a scholarship like the Merit Scholarship of Ateneo or Star Scholarship of LaSalle, but turns out that this isn't the case. So I think the key in tying together what the other panelists have said is really doing a lot of research and understanding the schools that you're applying to, understanding what makes them unique, understanding kind of what you call like the spirit of the school. You kind of see it in UP, and I mean in the Philippines, for example, like UP is like the activist university, and you will feel a lot of that. I can't speak for the others, but there's definitely like a certain um, personality for the school, and the same goes true for the U.S. Whether it's MBA or whether it's undergrad. That every school is kind of different, kind of quirky in its own way, and it's great to be able to understand it and find the one that that fits for you. Like maybe like you shouldn't just want to go to like Harvard or Yale or Princeton or Penn just because to the top schools if you don't think that they're going to be a good fit for you.
Okay, so there's a question that's submitted to the camp email, and I think it's probably best if we address this. I think we sort of answered this earlier, but I think we can elaborate a bit more. So the question is like, what are the major differences between the applications to the States and then the applications here? I know you sort of touched on it before, but I think I think a little more elaboration on this question would be useful to the mentees. So feel free to answer.
I can take a stab at that. I think a major, it's just a more involved application process. So for the MBA programs, typically you would submit a set of essays. It used to be depending on the business school you're applying to, you'd submit anywhere between 1 to 3 to 4 essays. And the trend has been the past few years that schools are requiring fewer essays. But it takes a long time to put these things together because they're trying to get at your purpose for applying to business school, what you want to do after business school, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and you have to cram all of that content convincingly in a way that will appeal or will convince the application reader to grant you an interview within like the space of like probably 1,000 words total. So you have that, which I don't think is something that's present typically in Philippine college admissions processes. You also have much more involved recommendation process where your recommenders are asked to fill out a couple of pages of sort of short essay, short question type prompts about you, and then they rate you on a scale of 1 to 10, for example, on different metrics such as your leadership ability, how strong you are analytically, etc. So it's a much more involved process, and if you're getting recommenders from the Philippines, They typically aren't used to doing stuff like that, so you have to handhold them through that process as well. And then aside from the recommendations and the essays, I guess the other more involved piece to it would be the interviews, which I don't think is something that's present at all in UP, Ateneo, or LaSalle, for example. Um, so for business school, you typically go in for an interview with a local alum, or you fly to Singapore or Hub City somewhere in Asia, where they hold interviews. And then it depends on each school. It might be like a one-on-one interview, kind of like a job interview, very structured. For Wharton, it is a sort of a group conversation where you have a sort of a meeting between yourself and other candidates to the program. Yeah, so I think those are the key points that aren't present typically in the Philippines, that you have to like get used to, get a handle on.
So when I think about my application process in undergrad versus um, an application process to the Philippine universities in undergrad versus now abroad, I think the main difference would be like my applications in undergrad were more of just showing them that I can be the best person that they're looking for, that like I had worked hard in high school. These were my extracurriculars, these were my activities, and just overall showing them how like excellent a candidate I can be for their school. For business school, I think it was a little different in that I was looking to show not just like excellence, but more of a unique side. And it was like an overall package that you kind of wanted to craft for them. That not only did I do okay in undergrad, but here are my work skills, and here's what I can bring to your table. Here's how I'm different from applicant X, applicant Y, and applicant Z. And so it's a more thoughtful process. And in terms of what you sort of want to do afterwards as well, that kind of also factors in. So it's kind of what you want to bring to this table and what you will be using your MBA or your degree for afterwards. And so it was a more like holistic process, and it just wasn't like, here's me and here's the best that I can be, versus like, here is me, here's what makes me unique, here's what I can bring, here's how I plan to use this for like a bigger cause someday.
So I think Paul and Bea covered most of the relevant points. I think just to give a quick comparison, I think in applications in the Philippines, your admission is largely driven by what score you got in the exam. So whatever your UPCATS or ASET or DLSU set score was, that pretty much dictates whether or not they take you. I think here, as they said, it is a more holistic approach, and the exam score, your SAT score, or GMAT score, is more like a minimum you need to fulfill, and everything else is what determines it. So whether or not you get a high score in those exams doesn't necessarily mean that you can get admission. So I think that's like the main difference between the two.
Okay, so a few more questions that have come in. So what do you think a university? Well, you sort of answered this. So coming from a university in the Philippines, what kind of grades and GWAs should you sort of have to be successful?
In terms of if you're the Philippines and you want to move abroad, so I think what they say is that it should be at least on the US scale somewhere around a 3.5 over a 4.0. I think in the Philippines, in Ateneo, well, Ateneo has a 3.5 ranking, and I think for UP that might be something like 1.4, 1.5, preferably higher over the 1.0 scale. For LaSalle, I'm not particularly sure, but whatever the conversion is. I think you kind of want to be in the top 10% of your class, and you want to have honors if possible. even if it's cum laude or magna cum laude, so, one of those things. It's not by no means that if you don't get honors, for example, you can't study abroad, but it helps a lot when you do.
Okay, so thanks for that. There's one question here. Do you think that there are any disadvantages to being um, both international and sort of a transfer student as compared to, well, I guess it's sort of like, say, somebody from the States and applying directly as like a freshman undergrad?
I don't want to say there are disadvantages. I want to say that there are different challenges. Um, I don't think that you're put at a disadvantage. You're given the same opportunities to succeed, and when they accept you as a transfer, they do so knowing that you will be able to survive and thrive in this environment. So I don't think that it's something to worry about on that front. I think there are other things to worry about, like what you decide to study, which classes out of the I don't know 5,000 available or something you want to take, um, and how you're gonna make new friends and everything. There definitely are a lot of challenges that come along the way. Like you're going to have to find a way to meet all the friends that you did not meet freshman year and or sophomore year. Uh, but it's not something that can't be overcome, and it's something that I think only makes your college experience richer, especially because in a way you're doing it the second time. Like wherever you went to university the first time, you made a lot of friends there, and it's just kind of repeating the experience, except you know a lot faster in a different university.
I guess like to add to that, not from the transfer perspective, but from the international student perspective, you would have to sort of get used to just, general culture of the university, general culture of the US. So maybe as a transfer student, I don't know, because you wouldn't have been able to attend their orientation sessions or everything, that might be a little bit more of a challenge. And then from the MBA perspective, there is sort of a challenge around, um, recruiting and looking for a job given the time you are here. And if you're interested in working in the US, there's a challenge around that because, I mean, US companies also have their own sort of recruiting style that isn't typically like, it's different from how firms recruit in Asia. It's very networking intensive. It's a lot of effort getting to know people at the firm and them getting to know you. Whereas in my experience in Asia, it's a lot more about just dropping your resume, and if they like you, they'll send you an interview invitation. Um, so if you're interested also in working here, it's a lot more involved to get to do that. So that may be a challenge for some international students as well.
Okay, so another question that's just come through. What are there any sort of deterrents for people? Like, is there anything like a red flag na sort of, I guess I'm just paraphrasing this person's question, but is there like a red flag for certain people na, maybe an international education isn't for you, or a chance like transferring from the Philippines to abroad isn't the right move? Yeah, like feel free to, I don't know, feel free
Mm.
to sort of think about it if you need to. Yeah, there's no rush on the answers.
I think a lot of it has to do with like personality. If you're the type of person who is not independent, or is a person you're not a person who wants independent, like you rely heavily on other people and you want it to remain that way, then it might be more difficult for you to adjust to just the living conditions in the US because think about it, you are essentially taken from home and plopped into this new environment where you have to navigate it yourself, make new friends, understand the culture, fit in with the culture, deal with all the problems of the culture. And if you're not the kind of person who is either used to that or wants to get used to that and so is willing to put in the effort, then it's going to become a bigger challenge for you to want to do that. I think that the state of the U.S. is also, or at least among the some of the top tier schools, whether they're Ivies or um, like other very good universities all around the United States, they're biased inherently towards, I think, self-starters, people who are very motivated, very driven. You by no means have to be one. Like, like not everybody can be or should be like the entrepreneur or the leader or whatever, but they are biased, I think, in that way, such that if you are that type of person, it's much easier for you to thrive and to get on. So if you're the kind of person who absolutely hates that or is, feels uncomfortable voicing out themselves, voicing out their own opinion, and all that, then might be again quite difficult. I think the last thing about is also academics. Academics here is, I would think, a lot more intensive. You do a significantly large amount of reading, or significantly more difficult problem sets, or take significantly harder exams. Um, than you would in like even a Philippine high school setting, or a Philippine university setting. So if you're not comfortable doing that, if you're not the kind of person who can work hard and maybe in some cases also play hard, then it might be a bit more difficult for you.
I think to add to that, to Lance's last point, in terms of the academics here, I have noticed like a greater emphasis on recitation. So when I was in college in Manila, the goal was really just to get high grades on the exams, and nobody really talked much in class. But here, I think they have a big emphasis on involvement, group work, uh, teamwork, and like basically talking a lot in class. So that's something you have to get comfortable with if you wanna make the transfer.
Okay. So there's a question here. Do you think that what's basically the question asks like what's the best time to apply as like a trans to apply as a transfer student or as an MBA student, like what's the best time to apply?
For transfers, only two times you can apply: after your freshman year, after your sophomore year, or I guess during your freshman year and during your sophomore year. You can apply anytime after that, but I do think that the preparation for transfer starts a lot earlier than the actual process itself. Like you can't just, like, it's very difficult to just, out of the blue decide to transfer and then in a week come up with all your materials and stuff, because you do need to, have a good background, a compelling story, and if you haven't been actively working to develop that, like if all you've been doing was kind of going with the flow, riding with the current, then it'll be more difficult for you to actually um, come up with a compelling story for why you should transfer.
So from the MBA side, I think the timing around that is a little more something that you alone can kind of determine. So through the application process, they put a lot of emphasis too on your career and what you have accomplished, and I guess how you have grown in that career. And so you kind of want to give them enough material to show that you have been, like, you have shown leadership, you have shown teamwork, you have shown like career progression, and so at that point you feel that you're ready to apply. So I guess it differs from everyone, because some people work for a couple of years and then do another job, and so it's really like very, very subjective and entirely kind of something that you can say on your own.
Okay, thanks. I think there's a very interesting question here. I think the MBAs can actually answer this. Do you think it's necessary to study abroad in the United States? Or I guess, sorry, rephrasing it, like, sorry, that started me misinterpreting about. So it's like, do you think not studying in the United States sort of puts you at a disadvantage, particularly if you want to go abroad at some point, or if you want to work abroad at some point?
I can take a stab at that. I guess it depends on what you want to do as the applicant or as the student. Certainly, if you wanted to work in the US, going into some of the fields that people who go to business school go into, for example, finance or consulting or what have you, then if you, as someone coming from the Philippines, then you definitely should take your MBA so that you can recruit for these roles. If you wanted to, for example, work in Asia, then it's a lot less structured. Maybe there's more flexibility for you coming in with, for example, an education from the Philippines and great work experience from the Philippines, to come into a, for example, finance and banking role in Asia, in Singapore, for example. And I have a lot of friends that have done that, and they didn't take their MBA. They shifted from their first job in the Philippines into, for example, a role in investment banking in Singapore, in Hong Kong, and then they've thrived and grown in their career just from that shift, and they didn't take an MBA. So it depends on what you want to do. I would think that in Asia you probably don't need a US MBA to get the career you want in business. Although having the US MBA, in my view, still gives you more flexibility. It gives you that credential, right? And still, I think to a certain extent, employers in Asia still value sort of these MBAs from US schools to a certain extent, but it's not necessary. If you wanted to work in the US, just from a practical perspective with how the recruiting process goes, um, I think that it would certainly be, it's almost necessary to take your MBA here.
So I don't, yeah, so similar. I guess like if you want to, I don't think it's like extremely necessary, but it certainly makes things a whole lot easier and it like makes sure that you have one foot in the door. I think another hurdle that you have to face too is, let's say, you want to work here, but you don't have the work authorization. So I'm sure like having a US degree would be more helpful in terms of like hireability and opening up more doors and opportunities for you. However, if you have work authorization, then it's an entirely different story. But it would still make things easier because a lot of the people, I guess, in companies would have like these networks of people who have studied in so and so school and whatever school, and it makes it just easier to reach out just coming from the same um, university because you have like that connection, you have that common like community that you can kind of draw from and like have a lot of resources versus kind of just coming and then starting from scratch and then not knowing. So the universities provide like an excellent infrastructure to be able to kind of dive into employment opportunities. And I guess too, in terms of personal growth, I think it's very I personally like was very happy that I came. I think it was a very, very different experience and it was very holistic and I feel like I would not have experienced it otherwise in terms of just kind of being on your own and making like a lot of decisions on your own. I feel like staying in the Philippines didn't give me that much exposure, but coming here certainly did. So that's another aspect, I guess.
Similar to Paul and Bea's, it is it isn't like 100% necessary, but it definitely makes a lot of things easier. I would say, just to add to what I've already said, is that whether you decide to work internationally or in the Philippines, even the brand of it sort of is something that you keep with you for the rest of your life, basically. So it gives you a lot of opportunities and opens a lot of doors for you in that regard, regardless of where you stay, where you decide to work or stay for the long term.
Okay, so yeah, just a reminder to anyone, if you're watching this live, you can send your questions to the camp email. We probably have about maybe 15 more minutes before we have to end this video chat. So I think this question is more probably applicable to Lance. It's a relatively short question. It's how does credit transfer work?
How does the transfer process work?
No, so I think it's like about basically getting credit for classes so they don't they don't basically start out as a freshman again.
Yeah, it depends on the school, but what most schools will do is they're going to take a look at your classes or whatever you studied in the Philippines, and then they're going to they're going to look at their own curriculum and see how they can credit it. So, for example, I studied for 4 semesters in the Philippines and I was credited 3 semesters. It largely depends on the school, and I can't speak for all the other schools because I only transferred and studied in one. But if you're interested in that, I think the best thing to do is email somebody from the school or look up their website and see what their policy is for offering credits for transfers.
Okay, thanks. So if this is medyo a bit more of well, if you didn't go to your respective schools, so I guess for the MBAs, UPenn and Lance Harvard, what other schools would you sort of look at?
I would have looked at Stanford a lot more. Um, Amazing school, focus a lot on some of my interests, which are innovation and entrepreneurship and design. So I kind of regret not applying, but that was always kind of at the top of my list. And then also Princeton. Like it's more academic, but I've met a lot of fun, really cool people who go to Princeton. So would have liked to have maybe studied there as well.
Um, s- let's go ahead, Trixie. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. So for me, I guess to answer the question depends on your like own interests, career interests, how you think. Like I spoke to earlier, how you think you'd fit into the nuances or the like program itself after you've like tried to learn about the different programs a bit more. So for me, given I'm interested in finance and investing, I probably would be attending somewhere like Columbia or Chicago. Yeah, if I didn't go into Wharton, given their, focus on finance and investing.
Yeah, again, similar to Paul's. I was also very focused on finance. So some other schools I was looking into was like Booth in Chicago, and then the New York schools because it's in that's where finance is. And I also looked at schools in Europe. So LBS is one of the schools I was interested in because they also have like a strong finance program. So again, as Paul said, like it's very much dependent on what you want to do and what you want to focus on, and that should be primarily driving what schools you're looking into.
Okay, so uh, I think this is can you guys comment on Filipino culture, both in your respective schools and in the states as a whole? The last part might be a bit hard to, but feel free to take a shot at it.
There's a small Filipino community at Harvard. Like there's or in at least in Harvard, I think there's one other guy who's born and raised Filipino, studied in the Philippines all his life, and then there's a girl who's Korean, but she was born and raised or grew up in the Philippines, speaks perfect Filipino or as perfect as you'd get for somebody who studied in an international school, but uh, very good Filipino as well. And there is a Filipino club, but it's mostly consisted of like Filipino Americans and yeah, mostly people who were like born in the Philippines, moved to America, or some form of that. And the culture is interesting because you see like little bits of like the culture as we know it, and you see what's transported itself or what parents who moved to the U.S. have passed on to their children, whether it's the I don't know the concept of like some of the food or the concept of like baon or whatever it is. Like you see like tiny fragments of it getting implanted in like the minds of people who never experienced our culture but know, for example, that you have to kiss your titos and titas and all that. It's very interesting. Um, as for the U.S. as a whole, I think that it feels like a pretty warm community, at least here in Boston. I remember last year we had a Christmas party for all the Filipinos in Boston. Mostly grad students. I think I was the only undergrad who went, but it's a really fun night. Just got to talk and meet new people and kind of hang out to them. Uh, and it's almost as if because you are in this new place, even if you don't know each other, the fact that you're Filipino means that you should at the very least try to get to know one another.
So I guess similarly, so on the like MBA level, there were four Filipinos in our batch, and we're very very close. And also like there's no, at least on the MBA level, we don't have a formal Filipino club, but we know who the Filipinos are, and we hang out with them quite often. So it's very warm. It's very like it's a good bunch. We also kind of try to reach out to other Filipino grad students who we know through like common friends or connections, and we just kind of try to get everyone together once in a while. We have this like WhatsApp group going on, and it also includes all our other friends in the MBA program who are half Filipino or who are Filipino but have grown up here. And so it's a good it's a good community as well. I think there have been some efforts to kind of try to get to know the Filipino undergrads too across both grad and undergrads, and um, yeah, I think Sabina might be able to speak more about like the undergrad Filipino community.
Actually, yes. Yeah. So yeah. So I'm an undergrad at Penn. Hi, Sabino. I'm part of the camp. I'm part of camp's exec team. So yeah, so I'm an undergrad at Penn, and the Filipino community here is it's pretty strong. Like it's a fun group. They take anybody in, but a lot of the members are either from the Philippines or of like Filipino American descent. But if you're worried about sort of like uh, homesickness or being sort of like this culture shock of suddenly being away from everybody who acts and sort of acts like you, there is an element of that, but it's definitely manageable, especially with the cultural group. And to be honest, the people from the Philippines, at least here in Penn, I can't speak for other universities, but the people who come from the Philippines tend to sort of clump together, so you always have that sort of support group, which you can sort of come and go as you want if you need to know. Like if you want to branch out and meet new people, which you really should in your college life, you can do that. But if you ever feel lonely, you always have like this core group you can get back to. Okay, so time for us to wrap up. I think just as a way of closing, if you guys would like sort of want to give, like last words of advice, anything you felt that you wanted to say, but none of the questions really allowed you to say it. If there's anything like that the panel wants to sort of share with the audience, now's the best time to say it. Then we can close the show.
I think one of the things that I see in a lot of people who email me say, "Oh, I want to transfer. Tell me about it." Is they hear about it once, they talk about it, and then they think, "Oh, all I have to do is submit my application, and then that's it." But I think transferring or even applying for an MBA is something that you kind of have to be obsessed with for a while. It's something that you have to put, hundreds of hours into, like dedicating just the time, the mental energy, the brain power to telling yourself that this is something I really want. I'm going to do everything in my power to do it. Whether that means talking to other people who've done it before and getting advice, spending time writing and rewriting your essays, your resume, your answers to the short questions, or whether it's just researching different kinds of schools to figure out which ones you have the best chance in or which ones make the most sense for you. I think that that's something not enough people do. I think it's more too often a case of just, oh yeah, I'll do this and then bahala na, as opposed to like a real concerted effort. And I think that that's something that you really have to keep in mind if you want to be able to do this. It's really you have to work for it. Like as people like me and people like we're mentors. We're there to support you, but we're not there to make sure you get into college. Like that's ultimately your job. We're here to offer advice and yeah, show support, but if you don't want it, like, there's no way for you to be able to get it.
Yeah, I second all of the things that Lance just said. And I mean, I'd also just like to, I mean, for myself, close by saying that I really, like Bea, I'm also very happy with the decision that I made to come to the US for my MBA. I think it's one of the, most unique and like experiences of my life so far. And I certainly have learned a lot, both about, business, which is the subject matter of the course I'm taking, and myself. It's opened a lot of doors for me that otherwise I would not have had access to as someone from the Philippines. So I mean, if you guys are interested, and if you guys really want it, if it makes sense for you based on your future plans for your life or your career, I would highly suggest that you guys go for it.
Yes, I guess on my end, very, very similar to Paul. So when you're thinking about coming for undergrad or for grad school, like like I know a lot of the focus is on the academic side and what it can do for you professionally, but for me, like probably half the experience is also personally in terms of the people I'm meeting, just in terms of the things that I get exposed to, the experiences, the variety. I think it's very unrivaled. And like having had my undergrad in the Philippines, I can feel the difference in terms of just the opportunities and just like, in terms of like the universities having such renowned speakers come, authors, business people. It's very like exciting, and it's very like it's amazing, and as well as like the personal development as well, just like being on your own and like navigating this whole being away for the first time and all of that. I think it's a good character building experience, which yeah, I was very happy to get.
Uh, so I think Paul, Lance, and Bea covered a lot of it. On my end, I just want to, I guess, say that it's I personally had a great undergrad experience in the Philippines. I learned and grew a lot when I was in UP. But at the same time, coming to Wharton and coming here has been a very different experience. And I feel like having gone through both, I feel like both of them have contributed a lot to who I am now. So as they've said, if you have to assess like what's good for you and what new experiences you want to do, and I think there's something to be said about like having both those experiences. So whether or not you're thinking about like transferring now or like perhaps doing your graduate school like at some time in the future, grad school here at some time in the future, it's definitely a good experience to try. So yeah, that's it. Mm.
Okay, so yeah, that's all the time we have. That's all the time we have. Just wanted to, I'll probably say on behalf of the audience, thank you very much to our panel. For those of you that sort of want to watch this panel again, there will be a YouTube link. Um, you know, this thing has been sort of recording the whole time, so it gets posted to YouTube. So I'll send that link out to you guys. Other than that, if you have any more questions, feel free to email the camp email, and then the exec team will try to get back to you as best as we can. But yeah, so again, on behalf of the whole panel, thank you to our panelists. If you guys just want to sort of sign off and say bye, you can do that.
Okay, my
Bye.
my pleasure. Bye bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Right.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Thanks.